just to give you kind of a recap of what we're doing, we're in a series now called Relationships on the Rocks, which again isn't always sunny. We've tried to include some positive examples in this relationship series so it doesn't just get bogged down with negativity. But if you read through the book of Genesis, you see a lot of dysfunction happening in a lot of different families. And so we want to take these snapshots of people's lives and learn from them, hopefully, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes in our own relationships. And that's really the goal in this, is just to get some relational wisdom from these different stories and people's lives that we encounter in the book of Genesis. And so I want to just recap what we talked about last week. So last week we talked about deception, specifically deception in the life of a couple of brothers, Jacob and Esau, but also their parents are involved. Their parents have favorite children, and so they take sides in this, and they step into the deception themselves. And Jacob takes his brother Esau's blessing, which is a big deal in the ancient world. It's like God's favor and descendants and prosperity for the future is what it entails. And so Jacob, who's already taken the birthright, like the double portion of the inheritance, also steps in and tricks his brother out of his blessing. And so it causes lots of problems. It takes advantage of his brother, and everybody's motivated to act dishonestly to further their own interests. And Isaac makes a huge family decision without talking to his wife because he knows she'll disagree. Those are tricky waters to get into if you're in a partnership or relationship, right? To make big decisions without working together as family. Rebekah encourages Jacob to deceive his dad and his brother and steal the blessing. And Jacob pretends to be somebody else, somebody he is not. And we talked about last week practical ways that oftentimes we all kind of fall into that trap of trying to be someone that we're not. Okay, and if you want to get into more specifics, you can watch that on our YouTube channel, which is Mountain View Bible Church Utah, and recap some of that. But as a result of this deception, the cycle of dishonesty continues. Trust keeps eroding in these relationships in this family. Esau is the brother that gets taken advantage of. He's grieved, and he actually plans to murder his brother as a result of having his blessing stolen, his birthright stolen. And then Jacob, because of all that, is forced to distance himself from his family and his relatives to save his life. And so deception causes all kinds of problems, and it might cause different problems in our relationships, but it's going to cause problems. And today we're getting into a different topic. And I'll come back to this in a second, so on each of the topics. So jealousy. How does jealousy play out in relationships? Specifically, in this case, in some sibling rivalries. And most of you in this room, not all of you, either teenagers or adults, and maybe you have siblings, and maybe things get complicated. Maybe there's some rivalries that are happening in your life, or even among your adult siblings, because life oftentimes gets more complicated when we become adults, right? The problems just get magnified, and it doesn't mean because we leave the home that we leave sibling rivalries behind, or we don't continue to be jealous of other siblings who have different, maybe, successes than we have. So we're going to talk about all that this morning. I try to get into terms, and that's why these strange photos. For you that are younger, maybe you're Harry Potter fans, this word mandrake is going to evoke some vivid images, or maybe just like literature. In that movie, it is a plant that screams when you pull it up by the roots. But a mandrake is actually a plant. It's a plant in the Mediterranean world, and since ancient times it's been used. It has a lot of strong medicinal properties. In fact, if it's consumed in too great a quantities, it can actually kill you. It can be lethal. But it's been used as a sedative, a painkiller, a powerful hallucinogenic, and a cure for infertility. And that last use of it is going to come to play in our story today. So we're going to encounter that word mandrake. This is a mandrake. Again, it's a root. That's the part of the plant, the tap root. It looks a little bit like a human body in form. And so that's why it's called a mandrake, like human drake. Another picture that, again, shows you the resemblance to the human body, which is why it's used for a lot of things traditionally related to the human body. There was a medieval tale that if you pulled a mandrake up by the roots, that it would start screaming at you and cause you to go mad. And so the only way in medieval times, or one of the ways that they would avoid this, they would tie up a dog to a mandrake plant during the day, and at night it would tug on it and it would uproot the plant so that the person wouldn't hear the screaming mandrake and go insane. We know today that if you pull up a mandrake plant, it doesn't cause you to go insane or scream at you, but that was thought at different points in time in history. So this is a plant that has a lot of different folklore surrounding it and a lot of different uses, but it comes into play in our story. So just FYI, that's what it is. So we look at two aspects of jealousy, and maybe these things come up in our lives as well. The first is comparison. That's really something that becomes a cause of jealousy. And just to give you a little background, the way that this relationship comes about is a little bit shady. So Jacob, he's the guy that tricked his brother out of his birthright and was forced to flee 600 miles away to some distant relatives. He lands in his uncle Laban's home and goes there, and he starts to work because, he's an industrious guy and he doesn't want to just mooch, and so he works. And after about a month or so, or a couple months, Uncle Laban comes to him and says, even though you're family, it's not right that you just work for me for free. So what do you want for wages? He says, well, I'll take one of your daughters for my wage. He has a couple daughters. There's Leah, and Leah has tender eyes, but Rachel, she's super attractive. Bible says she's beautiful and her outline is good. So that's the word that's used. Her form, her silhouette is good. So to Jacob, he sees Rachel and he says, that's the one that I want for my wages. So I'll work for 7 years for you if you give your daughter to me in marriage. And so they work things out. Again, this is ancient times, and you see things in the Bible that are not necessarily great, right, or ethical. And the fact that you would sell your daughter to someone for 7 years of work, somebody's benefiting here, and it's probably not the girl, it's probably the dad, okay? But that's the price he names. And so 7 years come about, time flies for Jacob because he's in love with Rachel. Time for the wedding. And so at this wedding, there's a feast, and the feast involves much drinking, alcohol. And so Jacob is not quite, all with it. And in the morning, after his wedding, he wakes up and he finds not Rachel, but the other daughter, Leah. That's awkward. And the reason why, Laban explains, is there's a cultural custom. We marry our oldest daughters off first. And so I'll give you Rachel, but you have to work for me for 7 more years. So the trickster Jacob just got tricked by Uncle Laban. So I guess karma, or, you reap what you sow, or however you phrase that, it's coming back at him. So it's complicated now. Jacob has 2 wives, one of whom he wanted and the other of whom he did not. And that's the scenario that we walk into. And so these 2 sisters, as a result of being really forced into this, neither one of them really had a say. They were purchased with Jacob's work from their dad. They're both thrown into a marriage. They're both married to the same man. So life is already complex, and now sibling rivalry is just going to ignite from this point on. We're going to pick up the story in Genesis 29, verse 30. It says, Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. Yeah, because she was the one that he really wanted to marry. He worked for Laban another 7 years, and when the Lord saw that Leah was neglected, he opened her womb. But Rachel was unable to conceive. Leah conceived, gave birth to a son, and named him Reuben, for she said, the Lord has seen my affliction. Surely my husband will love me now. So you can already see some undertones of she's the one that's unloved. And she's naming her kids things that are a part of her experience. And that's oftentimes what you see in the Bible. So she conceived again, gave birth to a son, and said, the Lord heard that I am neglected, and he has given me this son also. So she named him Simeon. She conceived again, gave birth to a son, and said, at last my husband will become attached to me because I've borne 3 sons for him. So obviously the first couple of sons, the hope was that there would be more of an attachment now, more affection. But is that happening? At least not by son 3, because by son 3, the hope is still the same thing. Maybe now my husband will be attached to me. So she names him Levi, and she conceives again and has another son and says, this time I'll praise the Lord. Maybe this time, 4th time's the charm. So she names him Judah, which means praise, and then she stops having children. So Leah, she's fruitful. She has lots of children, but she's forsaken. And so That's the point of comparison. Compared with my sister, I have children, which, as we'll talk about in a moment, is kind of a badge of honor in the culture at that point in time. But on the other hand, I don't have the love that my sister has, right? I'm not experiencing that. So she's going to major on what she doesn't have. How many of us, we fall into discontentment sometimes, right? We compare ourselves. So-and-so has more than what I have, and it results in competition. Not that this maybe got this deep and dark this fast as this story, but I myself have found myself a little bit competitive, a little bit jealous of people at different points of time in my life. And in my junior high days, I showed up at a school in 6th grade, a different school, and I met one of my classmates. Her name was Christina, and Christina was also very good at academics. And that was something that I used to pride myself on as a kid, because I wasn't very athletic. I was kind of a tall, skinny stick at that point in time in my life. Not a lot's changed today. But I was good at taking tests and getting good grades, and so was she. And so after we take tests or turn in assignments, we started comparing. What'd you get on that? Oh, you only got a 97? I got a 99 on that, right? And so we would just go back and forth. And then finally, fast forward to 8th grade year, we had a graduation. And guess who got asked to speak at the graduation? Not me, Christina. But at the graduation, guess who won a trophy? The largest trophy, I might add, that was given out that night for just character and being an all-around great person who, of course, wasn't arrogant about their academics at all, secretly. Me, right? So I felt like it came out on top, right? But we had this rivalry, this competition, and we were always comparing ourselves with each other. I won up to you. No, I won up to you, right? And we were focused on grades. But this relationship here is focused on love and affection and on family, right, on children. So Leah, she's got kids, which is honor in that culture, but she's forsaken. She doesn't have love. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she envied her sister. So she wants children. She wants honor. She has happiness to an extent. She has affection, but she doesn't have honor. Give me sons or I'll die, she said to Jacob. Jacob became angry and said, am I God who's withheld offspring from you? He's putting the blame on God there. Then she said, here's my maid Bilhah. Go sleep with her and she'll bear children for me so that through her I can too build a family. And so Rachel's solution is, if I can't have kids, I have this servant. And you can take her for a wife as well. And since she's only a servant, a slave, then her kids really are my kids because I own her as a slave. So that's how I'm going to build myself up. And it goes on. Her servant, her slave, has some sons, right? And she, again, she's cherished, but she's childless. And it's nice that her servant has children that she can claim as her own, but they're not necessarily her own children. So she's got it good when it comes to relationship with Jacob. She's the loved one, but she's childless, so she's not honored by the culture. There's always something that we're lacking, right? If I compare myself to you, you'll always come out on top every time. I can find something that you have that I'll never have. Maybe it's your resources, maybe it's your personality, maybe it's your ability to do business. Business is not one of my strong suits, and some of you are excellent at things like that. Maybe you're just a better parent than I am. You're more calm and collected all the time, and your kids are better behaved than my kids. We can all find ways to compare ourselves with people. We can start to get envious, start to get jealous, and that's what's happening here in this scenario. What are some reasons why we might experience jealousy and sibling rivalry? I mean, even as an adult. Can you think of anything? I mean, maybe it's something that you've dealt with in your own life, but are there any things you can think of? Why might we experience jealousy? In this case, it was over who's being forsaken and who has children and those kinds of things. But what are some other things that cause sibling rivalry? Yeah.
Money can be a big thing sometimes.
Yeah, money can be huge, right? Especially like if one sibling has it and the other one always struggles in that area, right? Becomes a point of contention. Anything else you can think of? Success, right. Uh, One of my brothers is a doctor, right? And if I compare myself to him and say, well, I mean, he put in the time, right? Like 15 years of college and residencies and all kinds of crazy stuff, right, to get there. But I could say, well, I'm not him, right? I just work at a small church. He's a doctor. Anything else? Yes.
Spiritual gifts.
Spiritual gifts, okay. Yeah, and see, some spiritual gifts are more in the limelight, and some things are more in the shadows, right? You might look at somebody and say, well, look at them. They're teaching, or they're leading worship and music. Look how talented they are. What kind of talent do I have? I watch kids in the nursery and the kids care. Don't undervalue those things, right? But some are a little more flashy and a little more visible. What were you going to say?
Just intelligence.
Intelligence, okay. Yeah, maybe somebody's like they just seem to have a wise word all the time, or they seem to make really good decisions or give great advice, and you're looking going, where did that come from? How are they capable of that? Other things might be unresolved childhood competition. You're an adult now, but you're still competitive over things, again, like money or maybe success. Maybe you look at your marriage and you say, well, my sibling has it so much better. That's kind of what's happening with the story of Leah and Rachel. They're comparing the marriages that one another have. Maybe you're in a situation where you're carrying more of the load, caregiving for your aging parents. And so you're looking at your other siblings and you're jealous because it seems like you're having to put in more of the work. Maybe your parents gift differently to your families. Maybe they tend to give more things or more financial support to your sibling or somebody else in the family, and you feel overlooked and you get resentful in that. Maybe they spend more time with another sibling on holidays, and you look and you're comparing things and you're saying that just doesn't seem right, right? Maybe it's divides over political views or religious beliefs or parenting styles, and it causes strife, again, between siblings or other family members. A lot of different things that can cause rivalry and jealousy in our situations as well. And a lot of adult sibling rivalries come from a need to feel seen and valued and treated fairly, right? And that's kind of what's happening here. And those are undercurrents behind a lot of different jealousy issues and rivalry issues. So now we're going to get into competition a little bit and look at how this keeps playing out, gets intensified. So we already know that there's comparison happening, and then they start to get competitive, like I started to get with Christina in middle school, right? How can I one-up this other person? It says, Rachel said, in my wrestlings with God, I have wrestled with my sister, and I won. I won because through my slave, I've now acquired children. So I'm on the up and up, right? As I'm comparing myself with her, I'm starting to look better now. She conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace. Now, this is later on in the story, but the reason why I put this verse here is because it gets at the heart of the matter. She feels disgrace. She feels dishonored in her culture because to be barren in that culture, to not have children, is to not have as much cultural value, right? You don't have an heir. You don't have people who are contributing to the family. And so it's kind of like a badge of dishonor if you don't have children. And so she's wrestling with this honor. She's striving to outperform her sister because she wants to get honor. That's really what she's after, and she feels, even though she's loved, she feels a sense of disgrace in her culture. And maybe when we're in a situation of rivalry or jealousy, like there's something that we want. We're trying to outperform someone or best someone because there's something that we feel like we lack, that the other person has that we want. So for her, it's honor. For her sister Leah, it's something quite different because she has the children. She has the honor. It says when Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she has 4 at this point, she took her slave Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. And so now she's doing the same thing, just keeping the competition rolling, right? Because now Rachel is acquiring some honor through her slave, and Leah says, well, I've got a slave girl too. Why don't I just gain more honor the same way? So it becomes a competition, and that slave has one son, and Leah says, "What good fortune." And then she has a second son, and Leah says, "I'm happy that the women call me happy." So she names him Asher for happiness. You hear that statement? I'm happy that the women call me happy. Like, can other people project happiness onto you? Like, there's something in there where you look at that statement, you're like, you're not happy. Like, because you're having to say, well, they're calling me happy, so that means I'm happy. She's really striving to outperform her sister because she's unhappy. She's trying to get happiness and contentment because ultimately her husband doesn't cherish her, doesn't show affection or love toward her. She's not happy. So one person's trying to get honor, the other person's trying to get happiness. They're competing with each other, trying to eventually arrive at a place that neither one of them, are going to seemingly arrive at. And so all this is just wreaking havoc on their situation. Switch forward. Reuben went out, this is where we get to the mandrake story, during the wheat harvest and found some mandrakes in the field. You know what those are now. When he brought them into his mother Leah, Rachel asked, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." Okay. Now again, culturally, one of the uses of mandrake was to treat infertility in their culture. And so Rachel says, "I haven't been able to have any kids of my own yet. Can you give me some of your son's mandrakes? Because it's not like we find mandrakes all the time, right? Can I have some?" Now, if you rewind this story several years, right, where you have two sisters that have a pretty good relationship, presumably, one sister asks the other sister for something, it's reasonable, it would help out. You would hope that somebody would say, "Well, sure, I've got a whole basket of them. Like, I realize you're struggling with this, and this is considered a medicinal treatment for this, so sure, you can have some. Like, I care about you. Of course I'll share some of my mandrakes." But jealousy has led to a situation where they don't have that kind of relationship anymore. They've lost their concern for each other. But Leah replied to her, "Isn't it enough that you've taken my husband?" Because she's the one that got married first, even though it was by deceit, right? "Now you also want to take my son's mandrakes." So we see how this relationship is playing out. "Well then," Rachel said, "he can sleep with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." So this sister relationship is just blown apart. It's all transactional. So when Jacob comes in from the field, Leah goes out and says, "You must come with me. I've hired you with my son's mandrakes." It's just a warm and happy, fun marriage happening here. And so all concern for each other has been lost because there's competition and there's jealousy, right? We don't care about each other anymore. We just care about having the thing that we don't have and competing with each other. So it's all overshadowed. And relationships are nothing more than a series of transactions. And if we get to a point where we can look at somebody in our family and like we realize, I don't care about you as a person. And all of our interactions are just, what can I get from that person? Like, that should be a huge red flag for us that we've slipped into something. And it might be jealousy. It might be some kind of a rivalry. But that should really clue us in that we're not okay internally. And then there's God, who's kind of been on the sidelines throughout this whole thing. And you're thinking, well, what's God think about all this? How's he involved? And these verses that we'll close on give us kind of a good window into how God's navigating all this. It says God listened to Leah. So apparently Leah is calling out to God or cursing God or something in the process of all this. Why is my life the way that it is? Maybe she's just complaining. We don't know. But God listened to her, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. So Leah said, "God's rewarded me for giving my slave to my husband." I doubt that's the case. I think God's just listening, and he's compassionate despite her. Then Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. God has given me a good gift. I think that's something there. I think that's significant. Right? James talks about every good and perfect gift comes from above, from the Father of lights, right? He doesn't change like shifting shadows. And so she's kind of come to an aha moment here. I don't know if it's really registered with her what she said, but she realizes God's given me a good gift. So now finally her focus isn't on what she does not have, which is a good relationship with her husband, happiness, but she's seeing these children that she does have as something good. And maybe we get to the point where we're looking at everything other people have that we don't have. But then we realize, oh wait, I might not have a lot of finances, but you know what? I've got really good friendships. And so that's a blessing. So instead of just focusing on how I don't have that, what has God given me that other people might not have? And these kinds of things can really turn our perspective, right? God's given me a good gift. This time my husband will honor me because I have borne 6 sons for him, and she named him Zebulun. Later, Leah bore a daughter and named her Dinah. So really, her hope, again, she's still hoping that her husband will honor her and give her happiness and affection, right? So she hasn't let go of that, but at least she started to recognize God has given me something good in these children, right? Now we'll look at Rachel for a moment. Then God remembered Rachel. So God's listening to both of these women in their conversations, or maybe complaints, or maybe just avoidance of him. Like, God knows the situation. He listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph and said, may the Lord add another son to me. So what we can learn, I don't know if these sisters ever keyed in on this, but what the teller of this story wants us to see is that despite their rivalry, which wasn't good, God's listening to them. Despite the fact that they're crediting God for giving them kids through abusing slaves, like, that's not of God. Despite all that's going on, God's listening to them. God's concerned. And God's giving gifts to both sisters. And sometimes when we're stuck in these cycles of jealousy and rivalry, and who knows what else, all these relationship issues that put us on the rocks, like, it doesn't mean that God has lost sight of us. You know, sometimes God is listening, and God is even doing good to us in the moments that we don't deserve it at all. And so I think that's important to think about as well. Like, God is not absent in this process, even though people are just wallowing in their own imperfections and relationship conflicts. God is doing good things. They just haven't quite learned to focus on the good that God is bringing into their lives. Thus the jealousy, thus the rivalry is happening. I want to close on this. So let's say that we are experiencing some sort of jealousy or rivalry or sibling rivalry, even in our adult years. What can we do to reduce or heal family rivalries? What are a few biblical principles that we might kind of import into our own situations? Here's a list, and give you a couple verses. First of all, focus on the good that God's given you. We just talked about that a moment ago. Sometimes we get so focused on what we don't have that we miss out on the good that we do have. 2, practice honest, gentle communication. The Bible talks about speaking the truth in love. And sometimes we're not so good at the in love part of that, speaking the truth. And so maybe we need to talk openly about our feelings being hurt or about misunderstandings. And we need to talk about how we feel instead of accusing that other person or that sibling. Maybe it's not about winning arguments, but it's about restoring our relationships with people, right, through communication. Choose forgiveness over resentment. That can be powerful. Colossians 3:13 says, bear with each other and forgive each other. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. Ouch, right? Forgiveness can go deep. Maybe that's acknowledging, hey, we've both made mistakes in this process. Maybe it's my sibling or family member never apologized, but instead of holding on to bitterness, I'm just going to let go, right? Rejecting envy and comparison is helpful. Instead of comparing your life to your siblings or family members, celebrate their blessings and learn to notice the ways that God has blessed you. Thank God for your unique gifts and your unique path in life. even though, again, somebody else may have something that you perceive as better. Your life is unique, and you also have important gifts and value. Serve and honor your siblings. The Bible says, be devoted to each other in love, honor each other above yourselves in Romans 12. And so maybe it's trying to support or help out your sibling without expecting anything in return. Maybe it's just giving them mandrakes because mandrakes might help instead of looking for something, right, in return. Maybe it's speaking well about your sibling instead of just tearing them down and being critical in your conversations. Pursue peace even when it costs you. Romans 12 also says, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And so maybe you need to be the first person to reach out, even if your relationship, is kind of like in conflict. You're avoiding each other. Maybe it's just about not bringing up old issues, stirring up old arguments, or gossiping. Maybe it's setting healthy boundaries sometimes in order to pursue peace. Lastly, pray for your sibling or your family member and bless him or her. Luke 6 says, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. And so maybe it's about praying for your siblings' well-being, even if you have a strained relationship at the moment. So these are all different ways that we can kind of move toward healing. Maybe not necessarily guarantee that all the conflict will be cured, but move toward restoring relationships and reconciling relationships and healing.